Alright, this video is my review of the movie Bros. As always, I'm going to spoil everything through this movie, but actually in this case, I don't think it matters that much because I think you can actually enjoy most of the movie even if you know some of what's coming up. So I will just read a little bit from the IMDb summary. In this movie, you have Bobby, who is a neurotic podcast host who is happy to go on Tinder dates and content not to have a serious relationship. That all changes when he meets Aaron, an equally detached lawyer who likes to play the field. Repeatedly drawn to each other, both men begin to show their vulnerable sides as their undeniable attraction turns into something resembling a commitment. So this movie is aiming to be one of the first mainstream gay rom-coms. One of the co-writers is Billy Eichner, who is a gay comedian that I had never heard of before this movie. And then there's another co-writer and director named Nicholas Stoller, who actually is straight, which is very surprising. And then one other notable thing I'll mention about the production is that apparently most or all of the actors that you see on screen in speaking roles are actually LGBT. Even the straight ones. So just a little bit about my experience watching this. I'm a big moviegoer, and so I had been to a bunch of movies leading up to this past weekend, and I had always seen the trailer for this movie, Bros. And every time I saw that trailer, I was, okay, this does not look like the right movie for me. I'm not into rom-coms. This movie looks really silly and stupid, very shallow. And so I had absolutely no plans to see this until one of my other gay friends told me that he was going to see the movie. And then it came out and I saw the Rotten Tomatoes was really good. And then that first weekend went by and there were all the stories around how it just tanked in the box office. And there were all these theorizations of why. One thing I'll just note related to this is when my friend first told me that he was going to see this, he told me the name of the movie was Bros. And despite the fact that I had seen this trailer at least 3 or 4 times in the movie theater, I did not remember what the movie was called. And so when he told me about the movie, I didn't even know that that's the one that he was talking about. So it just makes me wonder how effective this marketing campaign was, and maybe that's part of the reason the box office was not so great. So anyway, I was seeing those stories about the movie in the news, and then some of my other gay friends started to go see it, and a lot of them actually did not like it, despite the really good reviews. And so I was like, okay, I really need to see this movie, see just what the heck is going on. First of all, what did I like about this movie? Let me just cut to the chase and say that I thought this movie was completely amazing. Yes, it is absurd, over the top, cliche, very inappropriate, sometimes cringeworthy, but at the end of the day, I think just completely astonishing. First of all, it was genuinely hilarious. I was basically laughing every few minutes throughout the entire movie, and I'm not normally a fan of these types of movies, comedies like this, but for whatever reason, maybe I was just in the right mood, I just cracked up throughout the entire movie. Some of the things that I'll call out that I thought were especially funny. First was just all of the discussions with the museum staff, all the back and forth. Another was when the Aaron character, the other guy in the couple, confesses that he wanted to be a chocolatier growing up. Another one that stood out was towards the end where they are outside and they are discussing whether or not they're going to get back together. And this guy brings this city bike and is trying to like put it into the bike rack, which is just really funny for me because that happens to me all the time when I'm using the city bikes in San Francisco. It just breaks up a really serious moment with some humor. And then finally, just the proposal at the very end where he gets down on his knees and then it's just not proposing marriage, but proposing to date for 3 months and then reassess. I don't know, maybe it's just my kind of humor. I thought it was all hilarious. But then the second thing I really liked, and this starts to get to why I thought the movie was so meaningful for me, was how it takes all of the stuff and gay culture that I have thought has been pretty messed up or pretty disheartening, just about how hard it is to date and find love. It takes all of that stuff, it does not hide from it, it puts it out in full light, and then it makes fun of it so that it's just funny and you can laugh at it instead of be depressed by it. And so just some examples of this. One is just the emotional unavailability of people, which I have found to be a pretty big issue with both myself and others. The short and sometimes pretty shallow nature of relationships, the whole app and hookup culture, the obsessive focus on appearance and the putting on a throne of the white, muscular man, and just the hypersexuality of everything. These are all things that I think you will find in gay culture. Not everyone, not all the time, but it's there. And I think it's a reason why a lot of people just give up on dating. But I don't know. I like the fact that they just brought it out there and just made fun of it. And maybe even more than that, tells a story of people who actually do find love with each other despite all of this. After I watched the movie, I've been listening to and reading a lot of stuff about the movie. And then one thing I saw, it was talking about how Billy Eichner really wanted to make clear in this movie that gay relationships are not the same as straight relationships. They don't always work the same way. There's all these other dynamics, some of which the movie shows shows. And it's like, yes, love is love, but it doesn't mean that it's exactly the same thing. So I really appreciated someone just acknowledging that. It's not something that I see in media that often. And it just made a lot of elements of the movie ring way more true to me, even though it was all very exaggerated and absurd. There was still a kernel of truth in almost everything I saw. The third thing I'll call out that I really liked was just the whole theme of being yourself and not downplaying your identity. The part of the movie where this really came to a head was the holiday dinner with the parents. The part where the Aaron character basically tells Billy Eichner, could you just tone down the gay just a bit? Could you just be a little bit less of yourself just for tonight? And I have to say that even in some of the reactions that I've heard to the movie from some of my gay friends, this is one of the parts that caused the most debate. I think some people were like, yeah, Aaron was basically right to tell Bobby to tone it down. This is his parents. You need to lead up to some of that stuff. You can't just dive right into the deep end. Yeah, if it was real life, I would probably agree to some degree with all of that. But it also reminded me of this concept called covering, which I learned about when I was part of an LGBT panel for work. We had this panel, and the guest speaker was this guy named Kenji Yoshino, and he is the author of a book called Covering: The Hidden Assault on Our Civil Rights. The basic definition of covering is the downplaying of any aspects of your identity that are not mainstream. His whole argument is that yes, with gay people, we have finally reached the place where you can be out of the closet for the most part in most parts of the country and be pretty comfortable. As in, you can tell people that you are gay and have people know that you are gay. But there's still the pressure, even if it's subtle pressure, to present yourself as a more palatable version of being gay, whether that is just trying to be really straight acting, trying not to be flamboyant, trying not to talk about elements of gay culture that you may be into that are not mainstream. The objective is just to come across as a completely normal person, except instead of a girlfriend, you just have a boyfriend. And everything else is the same. Nothing to see here. We do all the same things. We're gonna get married. We're gonna plan to have 2.5 kids. White picket fence. You see, I'm one of those acceptable gays. I had heard about this concept before I was on this panel, and I always thought it was just taking things too far, that this wasn't a big deal. It's just kind of this overly progressive idea that we shouldn't really care much about. But when you actually get into it, and as I started thinking about it for this panel, there is some emotional cost to downplaying your identity. And it might be subtle, but it's there. It's something I've definitely felt the pressure to do in my own life. And I've always wondered, like, hey, how is this impacting how I show up in the world? How I view myself? Would I have an even greater sense of self-love if I didn't have to worry about this? And in the book, Kenji talks about how it extends even just beyond sexual preference to all sorts of other things. One example also relevant to my life is race. The equivalent of covering in the race context might be trying to act white. Going back to that dinner scene, my opinion at the end of the day ends up being, yes, he was probably being a little bit over the top, especially when he's telling Aaron's parents that Aaron basically hates his life. But when I look at what the scene is trying to communicate, I am right there with the message, which is that it is very problematic to ask people to downplay their identity in that way or to cover, and I can see why the Bobby character had a real problem with that. And I really appreciate this movie just overall showing the more full view of what gay people are like. I think a lot of media depictions these days do tend to err towards the more palatable version of gay characters. And so I appreciate that this movie is showing the full thing. The other thing that really got me thinking as far as this whole theme of being yourself and accepting yourself was how the Bobby character is constantly questioning whether he is good enough to date the Aaron character. There's a couple times throughout the movie where he tells Aaron, yes, just already, just tell me that you're not attracted to me. I know that you're not attracted to me. I know that you're not into guys like me. And this just goes back to the idea how in gay culture, it often does seem like the white, muscular gay man is the one that is put up on the pedestal, and everyone else outside of that is just a rung down on the ladder. Something I've definitely thought about in my own life and just in my own self-acceptance and my own feeling of acceptance in the gay community. So as sad as it is, I was definitely just impacted by the Bobby character and its constant talk of, come on, I know that you're too good for me type thing. But I did like the message at the end of the day that the movie I think was trying to communicate, which is that you can be yourself. You don't need to be this white male gay stereotype to be worthy of love. All right, so what did I not like about the movie? Honestly, there's not much that I didn't like. There were parts of the movie that made me somewhat uncomfortable at some points. Some of the sex scenes, for instance, or just some of the more out there, inappropriate elements. But at the end of the day, I do think that was the point of the movie, and those are also some of the things that I end up appreciating about the movie at the end of the day for all the reasons that I just went through. And then the other thing that is not, the quality of the movie itself, but just the whole thing around it, is the disappointing box office results. It just seems like people didn't really come out to see this movie. I think in the opening weekend it had made only about $5 million, and the estimates are that it probably cost about $25 or so million to produce the movie, and then another $25 million or so to market it. And so at this point, it seems like this movie is potentially not going to be profitable at the end of the day, which is a shame. And it's like, why did this happen? You know, some of the theories are that it was a bad marketing campaign, that they didn't have enough big stars in the movie to actually draw people in, that maybe they didn't really have a very clear target audience, because most rom-coms apparently are aimed at women. And I don't know if this is a rom-com that straight women would be really interested in seeing. And then, as I mentioned, a lot of the gay people that I have talked to actually didn't like the movie. So it's like, who was supposed to like this movie? I mean, I did, but I don't know how many people out there like me there are. And then, of course, some people are saying that it's just widespread homophobia. That is the reason that people did not see this movie. I don't know if that's the case. I hope that's not the case. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit of a mystery why this movie is not doing so well. And more than anything else, I have to say that I hope it doesn't hurt gay representation in cinema long term. I hope that this does not become a cautionary tale of you can't make a movie like this. All right, so what did I think of the movie overall? Well, as I said at the beginning, I really, really loved this movie, maybe despite the parts that made me uncomfortable, or maybe even because of the parts that made me uncomfortable, to be honest. And so for that reason, I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 5 star rating. I would struggle with whether to recommend this movie to anyone, just given the really variable reactions from the people that I've heard who have actually seen it. But all I can say is that I liked it a lot, and I really appreciate that it is out there. All right, so that'll do it for this video. As always, if you liked the video, please hit the like button, which will help others find it, and subscribe for more. Peace.